Let's get real. He didn't walk away. He didn't break up. He didn't even say anything was wrong. He just slowly stopped trying. He got used to you always being there, always caring, always picking up the slack emotionally, and because you kept showing up, he thought he didn't have to. But here's what he didn't realize. You weren't showing up because you had to. You were showing up because you chose to. And once you choose differently, once you pull back your time, your attention, your love, he's left with the aftermath of his own behavior. You don't need to become angry, cold, or vindictive. Just become unavailable, become the consequence of him thinking you'd never leave. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop showing up for someone who never noticed that you did. Let's break it down. When you show up consistently for someone, when you text first, check in, support them, forgive them, stand by them through their highs and lows, it's easy to assume they'll appreciate it. After all, you're being the kind of partner most people claim they want: stable, loyal, emotionally available. But consistency without appreciation does something dangerous over time. It breeds entitlement, not just comfort, but a subtle belief that your presence is a given. And that's when someone stops seeing you, not because they don't care, but because they've stopped recognizing the effort you're putting in as effort at all. He started thinking your good mornings were automatic, not intentional. He assumed you'd always understand when he was too tired to talk. He knew you'd forgive the missed call, the vague answers, the changing moods, not because he's evil or calculated, but because he stopped feeling the need to earn your presence. That's the cost of being reliable without boundaries. People begin to assume that your love is unconditional, even in the absence of respect, reciprocity, or emotional investment. But here's the truth: love, as beautiful as it is, still needs fuel, still needs effort, still needs to be acknowledged and returned. Because when you give without receiving, when you stay consistent while their effort fades, you start to run on empty. And that emotional emptiness builds resentment. The worst part, he probably didn't even notice. He didn't see you slowly becoming drained. He didn't notice your needs going unmet because he got comfortable, he got entitled. This is what people don't talk about enough: how emotional entitlement kills relationships. Not through dramatic fights or betrayals, but through the slow erosion of effort. The belief that someone will stay no matter what makes people lazy. And when someone starts to believe you're a permanent fixture in their life, they stop working to keep you there. You might think, but I'm just being consistent. Isn't that what a loving partner does? Yes, but consistency without boundaries sends the message: I'll keep giving, even if I'm not being valued. And people, even unconsciously, will accept that offer. They'll take what you give until you stop offering it, until you change the pattern, until you shift the dynamic. That's the moment everything starts to change. The second you recognize that your consistency is being exploited, not maliciously, but thoughtlessly, you start pulling back. Not to play games, but to restore balance. You stop over-explaining, you stop chasing, you stop giving in places where you're not being filled back up. And that disruption, that pause in the pattern, is often what finally makes someone realize what they've taken for granted. Because the danger of entitlement is that it blinds people to the value of what they have, and sometimes it's only through absence that awareness kicks in. But this isn't about manipulating someone into loving you better. It's about you realizing that being consistent doesn't mean being a doormat. That showing up doesn't mean staying where you're being depleted, that your love is a choice, not an obligation. When someone feels entitled to you, they stop checking in. They stop being curious about your emotional world. They start believing that just because you have been there, you will always be there. But when you finally walk away or pull back, it sends a message no words could ever express. You confused my consistency with permanence. You mistook my patience for acceptance, and now I'm no longer here. That's when they realize you were never obligated to stay. You were choosing to, and now you're choosing differently. There comes a point when words no longer work. You've explained how you feel, maybe more times than you can count. You've expressed the hurt, the confusion, the frustration. You've tried to make him understand that the way he's treating you is slowly wearing you down.
And yet, nothing changes.
Because when someone is committed to misunderstanding you, or more accurately, when someone doesn't need to understand you because they face no consequences, your voice becomes background noise. That's when you have to stop explaining and start withdrawing, quietly, firmly, without drama, but with complete conviction. We're conditioned to believe that if we just say it better, if we just find the right words, the other person will finally get it. But the truth is, people understand exactly what they want to understand. He heard you the first time you said you felt unappreciated. He noticed when your tone changed. He saw the disappointment in your eyes. He just didn't feel the need to act on it because he never thought your words would lead to action. That's where his comfort was rooted, in your forgiveness without consequence. Withdrawing doesn't mean being cruel or manipulative. It means stepping back from a dynamic that has stopped serving you. It means honoring your own feelings when someone else refuses to. And most importantly, it means allowing your silence to carry the message your words could never land. Because when someone no longer has access to your attention, your warmth, your presence, that's when they begin to notice what they've lost. Not because you told them, but because they finally feel it. Think of it this way: if you touch a hot stove and it burns you, you pull your hand back immediately. You don't sit there trying to reason with the heat. You don't try to make the stove understand that it hurt you. You simply withdraw. It's the same in relationships. When your needs are consistently ignored or minimized, continuing to explain them over and over becomes a form of self-abandonment. You're giving someone more emotional clarity than they're giving you emotional effort, and that imbalance is what keeps you stuck. Walking away from the conversation, from the dynamic, is where your power begins, because explaining can become a trap. It keeps you locked in the hope that if you just try harder, he'll suddenly change. But change doesn't come from words. It comes from pressure, from absence, from discomfort. And your withdrawal is the only thing that creates that discomfort in a meaningful way. He needs to feel the loss of your effort. He needs to sit in the silence you used to fill with your emotional availability. He needs to experience the shift from being prioritized to being irrelevant, not to punish him, but to show him that access to you is not unlimited. That love isn't something he can just take without giving, that your loyalty has a limit. What's more, withdrawing gives you the space to see things clearly. When you're constantly trying to explain yourself to someone who doesn't listen, you lose sight of your own voice. But the quiet that follows withdrawal, that's where clarity lives. That's where you remember who you are, what you need, and what you're no longer willing to tolerate. The truth is, someone who values you won't need to be convinced. They'll feel the change and want to fix it. Someone who doesn't, they'll let your silence be the end. Either way, you win. Because you're no longer in a loop of trying to make someone see your worth. You're showing it by no longer begging for them to. That's not giving up. That's growing up. That's healing. That's power. When someone takes you for granted, it's natural to want them to see it, to realize what they did, to feel the loss. You want to believe that one day they'll wake up and say, "I messed up. I didn't treat her the way she deserved." But here's the truth. Waiting to become someone's lesson keeps you stuck in their story. You weren't meant to be his wake-up call. You were meant to be his choice, and if he couldn't see your value when you were giving him your heart, your time, your loyalty, then your job isn't to make him learn. It's to become the loss he has to live with. You don't owe it to anyone to be their moment of growth. You don't exist to suffer so they can mature. That's a narrative that sounds noble, but it's toxic. Because while you wait around hoping that your absence teaches him, what your presence couldn't. You're putting your life on pause. You're staying emotionally tied to someone who already showed you they couldn't meet you where you are. And in doing so, you become an accessory to your own heartbreak. Becoming his consequence means accepting that if he couldn't show up for you while you were loving him fully, then you don't have to show up for him now that he's realized what he lost. Let that lesson happen without you. Let him learn by watching your life move forward without his name attached to it. You're not here to teach him how to be better. You're here to be better for yourself. He doesn't get to have your growth story as part of his redemption arc. He doesn't get to come back when he's figured it out after you did all the emotional heavy lifting. That's not love, that's convenience, and you are not someone's emotional safety net. You are not a trial version of real love, someone to practice on, until he's ready to get it right. That might sound harsh, but it's freeing because it means you can finally stop waiting. You weren't the lesson. You were the loss, the person he'll remember when someone else doesn't match your kindness, the person who showed up when no one else would, the one who believed in him, supported him, gave him chances long after he stopped earning them, and when he finally feels that absence, when he realizes the world doesn't bend for him like you did, that's the moment you become unforgettable, not because you fought to be, but because you walked away without turning around. And here's what's beautiful. You get to take that same love, that same capacity to care, and give it to someone who doesn't need to lose you to appreciate you. Someone who sees you clearly from the beginning, who doesn't need the silence to value the sound of your voice. That's what happens when you stop trying to be someone's lesson. You make space for someone who's already learned how to love. You don't have to prove your worth by suffering. You don't have to be someone's breaking point or turning point. Just walk away with grace, with dignity. Let him find his lessons somewhere else. You have better things to do with your heart than waste it on someone who couldn't hold it when he had it. Because you weren't put here to fix him. You were put here to find someone who didn't need fixing to treat you right. Choosing yourself isn't a dramatic act. It's not slamming doors, burning bridges, or delivering long monologues about how hurt you are. It's a quiet shift. It's waking up one day and realizing that the person you've been pouring into is never going to pour back into you in the way you deserve. It's that moment where you stop asking, "Why won't he choose me?" and start asking, "Why have I been waiting to be chosen at all?" That's what becoming his consequence truly means. Not revenge, not games, but realignment. Stepping into your power by stepping away from what drains it. The moment you start choosing yourself is the moment everything changes. Your mindset, your boundaries, your energy. You stop showing up for conversations that go in circles. You stop over-explaining your feelings to someone who only listens to respond. You stop waiting for him to notice the ways you've been shrinking to keep the peace. And instead, you start expanding again, filling the space you once gave to someone who didn't know what to do with it. Choosing yourself doesn't mean you stop loving him. It doesn't even mean you stop hurting. It means you've decided the pain of staying in something unfulfilling is worse than the pain of walking away. It's not easy. In fact, it's one of the hardest decisions you'll ever make because it means giving up the hope that he'll change, that things will get better, that he'll wake up one day and finally treat you the way you've always dreamed he would, but that hope has been costing you. It's been keeping you emotionally stuck. Every time you forgave without change, every time you lowered your standards to avoid conflict, every time you showed up when he didn't ask, those moments chipped away at your self-respect. And choosing yourself is how you get it back. You reclaim your time, you reclaim your energy, you reclaim your worth. Not because you're trying to prove anything to him, but because you're finally ready to prove something to yourself. You've already shown him what kind of partner you can be. You were loyal, forgiving, patient, supportive. But now, it's time to show yourself what kind of person you can be when you stop giving all your love to someone who doesn't meet you there. That's what becoming his consequence really looks like. It's not about hoping he regrets losing you. It's about not needing his regret to move on. When you choose yourself, something powerful happens. Your standards rise, not in a bitter way, but in a peaceful, self-assured way. You no longer entertain half-hearted love. You no longer chase after mixed signals or justify emotional inconsistency. You don't need him to treat you better. You've already started treating yourself better. That's when your life starts attracting better. Better relationships, better conversations, better peace of mind. He took you for granted because he thought you would always be there. But now you're not. Now you're prioritizing your well-being, your emotional safety, your happiness. And if he finally realizes what he lost, that's his burden to carry, not yours to fix. You don't need to be loud about it. You don't need to announce it. Just live it. Just quietly remove yourself from the places where you had to fight to be seen. Choose yourself every day in every moment, especially in the ones where it would be easier to go back. And in doing so, you become the kind of woman who doesn't need to be someone's consequence, because she's already become her own solution. Your presence was something he counted on. He may not have said it, but he relied on it. The texts you sent first, the way you always made time for him, how you cared about the little things no one else noticed. He didn't have to ask for reassurance because you gave it freely. He didn't have to chase connection because you always built the bridge. And that comfort slowly turned into complacency. Not necessarily because he meant to take advantage of you, but because your presence became so consistent that he forgot what it felt like to miss you. And that's the mistake he made. We think that love is about being there, all the time, no matter what. We're told that showing up consistently, even through the hard moments, is what proves our value. But sometimes being too available stops feeling like love and starts looking like permission. Permission to stop trying, permission to show up late, permission to bring less to the table because you'll make up the difference. That's the slow slide into being taken for granted, and that's why your absence will always be more powerful than your presence when someone has grown used to your effort. You can tell someone you're hurting. You can tell them you feel unseen. You can tell them you need more. But if they never feel the shift, if your words are never backed by action, then nothing changes. They just adjust to your unhappiness. They live in it, get comfortable in it, and hope you'll eventually settle there too. But when you withdraw, when the texts stop coming, when the emotional support disappears, when the space you filled so completely is suddenly empty, that's when the silence begins to echo. It's not about ghosting or being passive-aggressive. It's about protecting your peace. When you've tried to make it work and nothing changes, the most powerful response is to let go. Because when someone can no longer feel you the way they used to, they are forced to confront a reality they've been avoiding, that your presence was never owed and your love was never unconditional in the absence of respect. People don't change because you keep showing up for them. They change when your absence forces them to sit with what they didn't value. That moment when they reach for you and you're not there, when they expect your usual patience and they're met with distance. That's the kind of clarity presence can never give, because absence is confrontational. It doesn't argue. It doesn't explain. It just exists, and it forces people to ask themselves the hard questions. Why did she stop calling? Why did she walk away? How did I not see this coming? And the truth is they did see it coming. You probably told them, maybe not directly, but through your change in energy, through the emotional fatigue, through the quiet sadness in your tone. But because you stayed, they never had to act on what they knew. That's why absence is so powerful. It removes the option to ignore you. When you finally pull back, You give him the space to feel your value in the void you leave behind. He might not say it, he might not even fully understand it, but something shifts, something clicks. And even if he never comes back to tell you what you meant, the truth is this: your absence will always do what your presence couldn't. It will reveal how much you gave, how much you tried, and how deeply he miscalculated your loyalty. Because when someone doesn't value what you bring to their life, stepping away is not just a reaction. It's the only way to make sure you don't keep losing yourself in the name of love. Let him feel the space you once filled, that silence. It says everything. He banked on your patience. Whether he realized it or not, he built his behavior on the assumption that you would always be there. That no matter how many times he showed up half-heartedly, ignored your needs, or made you feel like a backup plan instead of a priority, you would stay. Not because he thought you lacked options, but because he believed you lacked boundaries. And that belief allowed him to relax into his inconsistency, to stop putting in effort, to stop treating you as someone he could actually lose. But what he never expected was the day you'd finally stop making excuses for him, the day you'd stop answering texts right away, the day your presence would feel gone. He expected you to stay. He counted on it. That's why he didn't flinch when you voiced your needs, because in his mind you were always going to be around. He may have loved the attention, the care, the way you checked in even when he didn't deserve it, but he didn't understand that those things weren't just your nature. They were your choices. He mistook your softness for permanence, and that's where he made his biggest mistake. The truth is, people don't feel the weight of what they had until the silence starts to settle in. And when someone gets used to your emotional labor, your listening ear, your loyalty, your forgiveness, they stop noticing the energy you pour into the relationship. They stop seeing the effort. They start to expect it. So when you finally stop giving it, when your tone changes, when your messages become shorter, when the calls stop coming altogether, it hits different. And not in an angry or loud way, in a quiet, piercing, undeniable way. That silence becomes the mirror. He finally has to look at himself and realize the pattern you broke, that you no longer show up for someone who only half shows up for you, that your presence was never promised, and that he never thought he'd actually have to miss you until you were gone. This isn't about playing games. It's not about giving someone a taste of their own medicine. It's about truth. Because your patience may have bought him time, but it didn't buy your forever. And if he treated your loyalty like a guarantee instead of a gift, then it's not your job to stay and teach him that lesson. Life will do that for you, in the silence, in your absence, in the way you no longer light up when his name pops up, in the fact that he's now just one of many people you used to know deeply. He gambled on the idea that you'd never walk away, that the emotional credit he built up in the beginning would keep paying off even as his effort disappeared. But emotional debt doesn't work that way. It accumulates, and when you finally decide that you've given enough, waited enough, hoped enough, it's not a warning shot. It's a full departure. Letting him deal with the silence is not cruelty, it's clarity. It shows him the difference between being liked and being loved, between having someone who was patient and someone who was blind, between having access and having connection. Because when you truly go quiet, when you stop reaching, when your energy is no longer present, he will feel it. Whether he admits it or not, the consequence he never planned for was losing the one person who saw him clearly and still chose to show up. But that version of you no longer exists, not because you changed, but because you finally chose yourself. And now he'll have to sit with the echo of the choices he made while expecting you'd never leave. In the end, the power to reclaim your worth lies entirely in your hands. When someone takes you for granted, your greatest strength isn't found in chasing them or explaining yourself endlessly. It's found in choosing yourself, setting firm boundaries, and walking away With grace, becoming his consequence is not about punishment, it's about self-respect. It's about showing up for the love you deserve, even if that means stepping back from the love that didn't. Remember, you are not defined by how others treat you, but by how you honor yourself. So stand tall, hold your ground, and let your absence speak louder than any words ever could. Because when you choose yourself first, you become unstoppable, and that's a lesson no one will ever forget.